Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Stop me if you've heard this one before. A late-night comedian has his show, it's doing very well in the ratings, and then he does something that gets on the wrong side of the powers that be, and they decide to have him axed as a result. No, I'm not talking about Jimmy Kimmel, I'm talking about Arsenio Hall. Because those of you old enough to remember, Arsenio Hall had his show back in the day, and he was the biggest thing in nighttime television. He was the king of late-night television. He brought a whole bunch of aspects to his show that basically the rest of his white counterparts simply couldn't match. But all it took was him bringing on Louis Farrakhan for one show, and his career was wrecked by a gang of anti-black racists in the white media. That's tragically why his attempted comeback was doomed to fail from the very beginning, no matter how well he did in the ratings. The white media took wrecking his career as a trophy on their wall. That was a big win for them. They weren't about to let him undo what they saw as a huge victory for themselves. And keep in mind, all of that with Louis Farrakhan on the Arsenio Hall show was over 30 years ago. Well, if that's what happened to a black late-night host because of one guest who didn't even have anything controversial to say, by the way, it wasn't like Farrakhan was on there saying anything about the Jews or what have you. If that's what happened to him, then what would a white host have? Oh, let's just stop the setup. Jimmy Kimmel was suspended last week, and I'll save you the suspense. The white folks out in Hollywood rallied for him, and of course you even had some Republican politicians going, well, I'm not so sure if the government should be leading the charge on this. ABC has already announced that they're taking Jimmy Kimmel off of suspension, not that it lasted very long at all, and they're bringing him back starting on Tuesday, so of course the rules aren't the same for them as they are for us. But you Negroes who were out here for the last 5 days saying that this is fascism, what Trump's doing is fascism, he directed his FCC to go after Jimmy Kimmel, and this is the beginning of the end of free speech, I tell you. Well, you see how long the end of a white man's free speech lasted now, don't you? I would say that I think that the big loser in all of this happened to be the Democrats, because they were hoping that if Jimmy Kimmel was suspended, they could point to this and say, see, they're going after the comedians. That's what they always do when the fascists want to seize power. This fiasco with Jimmy Kimmel brought all kinds of attention that actually would be favorable to the Democrats, or at the very least, it would be disadvantageous to the orange man, but it was never meant to be a permanent thing anyway. The big lie that the white leftist media was pushing is that all of this was Trump's doing alone. It wasn't. He wasn't alone. Donald Trump's getting plenty of help from these corporations who want him to allow them to ignore the law and to ignore federal regulations so they can consolidate and maximize profits beyond anything that any responsible legislation would ever permit. Donald Trump's about the only person who would be reckless enough to let them do it. They have a chance to make an absolute killing, and they're taking it. That's what's going on here. That's why they're accommodating Trump across the board. They understand quid pro quo. I mean, it's just amazing in a lunk-headed kind of way. The exact same people who were talking about Me Too and all of the rancid debauchery that was going on with Harvey Weinstein and others, all of the people who occasionally will admit the truth that the media is just a bunch of pirates and scumbags. For a hot minute, they were actually sitting here lauding these guys and going, oh, I can't believe that the media is caving and all this. Come on. These are the exact same people who were yucking it up with Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein and the rest of the scumbags. No fascist has ever been able to seize power without the industrial and corporate spheres allying themselves with said fascist. And this instance was no different. No matter what people may try to tell themselves now, the reality is that the temporary suspension of Jimmy Kimmel was an inside job. Hell, how many of those executives happen to be right-wingers, or at the very least, they're conservatives? Individuals who would love to be able to have a little bit less of that leftist liberal talk on the nighttime airwaves. We've seen this with people like David Zaslav over at Warner Brothers, and of course you got the Ellisons, David Ellison and his father, over at Skydance who have taken over Paramount. The people who are in front of the cameras or perhaps working in the writers' rooms on these networks, they may be left of center. But the white men who own these media apparatuses, most of them are not center anything, they're hard right. This is just an example of it. Okay, so some of you are probably wondering if the FCC decided that they were going to reverse their own decision in this case and they were going to stop putting the arm on ABC. Why would they even do that? How is this helpful to Trump? Well, the reality is all of this stuff that's been going on for the last couple of weeks has all been meant to get attention off of Jeffrey Epstein. And you know what? It might, at least in some modest way, actually be having some effect. Sure, it's not making everyone forget about the Epstein files, but especially for a country like the United States, where the average attention span is no more than 5 minutes, it just might be enough for some of them to be distracted. All of this constant flooding the zone with as much controversy as possible that Trump's doing is for a reason. It's not the white media that Trump's trying to outsmart. It's his own voters. Fortunately for him, they're not very smart to begin with. Fooling people becomes far easier when they want to be fooled. So for those of you who thought that your favorite late-night comedian being suspended was the end of democracy, you can go ahead and rest easy, or chuckle easy, I should say. Jimmy Kimmel was only off the air for 3 little old nights. So I guess this means that democracy is alive and well in America again, right? There's a lot of people celebrating as if that's what actually happened. It's beyond pathetic the Negroes who probably thought themselves so smart and sounding so profound by trying to defend Jimmy Kimmel of all people. Keep in mind, this is the same Jimmy Kimmel who was running around in blackface for one of his quote-unquote comedy skits about the NBA. This is not somebody we should care about one way or the other, but then again, I don't watch much TV to begin with, admittedly. But why do you have silly Negroes like Whoopi Goldberg and that other woman on The View sounding dumb as hell talking about our democracy? What the hell is wrong with them? America has never had democracy for a single instant in its entire existence. All this country has ever had is anti-black racism and white fiat. Full stop. There has never been democracy. This is an ethnocracy, and we know who's at the top of that particular pyramid scheme. And if this country ever did have anything even approaching democracy, it certainly wouldn't have it for us. That's the central problem that doesn't go away regardless of whether Jimmy Kimmel is on the air tonight or not. But for those of you who are still trembling in your boots as you sit there in front of the idiot box, wondering if the orange man is going to cancel your next favorite TV personality, consider this. The Democrats are not coming to the rescue. They're not telling anyone what they're going to be doing about all of this. Hell, Trump could go ahead and cancel The View or whomever tomorrow. Democrats would simply sit there and go, we're going to write a sternly worded letter. They didn't do anything for the academics who have felt the orange man's wrath, or the governmental bureaucrats who were summarily dismissed. Democrats say that they want to be put back in power, but they literally can't tell anyone why. The Democrats have gone straight from pretending to object to Charlie Kirk's racist rantings to falling all over themselves to vote to honor that same racist. By the way, I'm sure you've noticed that ever since Democrats did that, none of the shills and sock puppets who normally infest my comment sections are there now. Normally they slither out of hiding and whine about how you don't never say nothing good about the Democrats. Ah, but these same clowns are silent today because they can't say anything good about the Democrats. Both of the major parties play off of each other. They use each other so that they don't have to actually do anything for their respective constituencies. Republicans tell their racist Rube voters that they have to vote for the GOP because black people. Ron DeSantis and Chris Rufo ran that little hustle down in Florida, and the same clowns down in the swamps who thought to themselves that they were so clever and that they were going to be sticking it to black people. Now a lot of those exact same people, they're not laughing today. Instead, a lot of them are having to leave the state of Florida because DeSantis has screwed the place up so much. As long as certain people hate black folks more than they love themselves, they'll always be easy prey for that particular scam. And Democrats tell black voters that we have to vote for them because these mean old Republicans. And while it's true the Republicans are diehard racists, it's also true that the Democrats are no different and no better. The only difference is the Republicans at least are honest enough to spew their anti-black hatred openly. Democrats, on the other hand, they're the guys who are supposed to be the controlled opposition pretending to be our buddies. It's a good thing, though, that we've reached a critical mass of black folks who have finally gotten tired of being on the treadmill to nowhere. Democrats more often than not join in with and vote for the very anti-black legislation that the Republicans propose. They've been partners in crime. At the very least, the Democrats don't do anything about it. They certainly don't do anything to repeal any of these laws that the Republicans pass. So what does that tell you? They will, however, all join together to vote to have a day in the honor of a reprobate like Charlie Kirk. Now, I'm not a comedian nor even a comedy writer, though I would like to offer a modest suggestion to the survivors of the Donald Trump late-night wars. Instead of doing the usual wisecracks about the Orange Man, Jimmy Kimmel and the other survivors of late night ought to be making every one of their monologues about how weak and useless Democrats are and how they're not going to do anything. That's something you want to have front of mind for those audiences who are out there. It's easy to go ahead and take jabs at Donald Trump because the man is a sideshow unto himself. But if people are going to be lauding these comedians as speaking truth to power, then the operative term there is truth. The entire reason that you got these fascists, quote-unquote, who are on the march is precisely because the Democrats have spent decades showing everybody that they're not actually going to do anything. No matter how egregious the Republicans' actions are, Democrats practically never actually do anything about it once they get back in power. All they care about once they're in power is like Gavin Newsom out in California going to the French Laundry for dinner, or Nancy Pelosi getting those huge campaign contributions and in her spare time sneaking off to her favorite hairdresser so she can get all of that gray hair of hers dyed artificial brown. That's what the Democrats are concerned with. They're nothing more than a DC-based social club. And once they get inside the Beltway, far as they're concerned, it's all about sucking up to establish power. It's all about lining their own pockets. It's all about getting theirs. They could care less about what happens to any of their constituents, much less about people on late night. It's all a political game to them. They're way too busy trying to keep their jobs to do their jobs. And yet they're telling you that you need to make sure that they stay in their jobs. To do what exactly? Vote to give Charlie Kirk a national holiday in his own honor? Because that's about the only thing the Democrats haven't done yet. You know, with political friends like these, who the hell needs the GOP? That's the part a lot of these dead-brain denizens are going to have to accept. Yeah, you got Jimmy Kimmel back on the air, but so what? Does that actually change anything? You think that these people aren't running some kind of game on you? Now that is a joke. But not a very funny one. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Frederica Moore, Cheryl Tate, Winfield Scott, James Porter, and Anthony Pollard. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.